So Christina, I've got to ask before we jump into the movie. I love the movie, but you're a professor at Columbia University, and I've got to ask, how has that molded you as a writer and as a director? I mean, obviously with your experience in Europe, but now switching over to the New York side, how has that impacted you?
Well, I've always had those two sides. I'm a scholar and a filmmaker, and I've always, wrote, produced for many years back in Europe, and I was teaching there as well. I was teaching at the German Film and Television Academy for many, many years. I was based in Berlin. And then when I relocated to New York 5 years ago, I started teaching at Columbia University and at the New School for Media Studies, and now I teach at the film program of Barnard College of Columbia University, and also in the School of the Arts of Columbia University. So I teach both in film studies and screenwriting. So that's always something that is informing, if you want, what I'm doing as a filmmaker. And what I do as a filmmaker is also, I'm interested in experimenting and pushing the envelope as a filmmaker. So this is my debut feature as a director. So if you want, it's the first time that I can go all the way in terms of what is my vision.
Well, let's jump into that vision. The fact that you start out with introducing the multi-split screen, and that being an element that we get to see and experience throughout the film. As a screenwriter, how do you write that in, or is it something that you focus in on the edit? I mean, when does that become part of your script?
Right. Well, it's interesting because I just shot the second feature, which I'm now editing. And
that's Rainbow Experiment?
That's the Rainbow Experiment, right. And that has much more, that was written in knowing that I'm experimenting with split screen. When I wrote 42 Seconds of Happiness, it wasn't in my intention. It sort of, came out in the editing. I sort of, was so fascinated because of my process, how I work and the kind of performances that I get. I was so fascinated by the different meanings each performance brought, each take brought to the scene. So I wanted to experiment with having that possibility of seeing those different versions of a reaction to something, and having them, you've seen multi-screen in 42 Seconds where you have there's different uses of that multi-screen, and it's so you have situations where you have the several storylines happening at the same time, and the focus gets, you attract the focus through sound, for instance. So there's 4 different stories happening at the same time, but the sound attracts your attention to one of the screens, so one of the stories, and then there's almost like a conversation between the 2 different stories, and the one complements the other, and a new meaning gets created. I like seeing that a little bit like both horizontal and vertical editing.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So it's not just it's not just a series of events, but the one event influences the other because they happen at the same time.
It feels like such a great visual cue. Like it works in, especially the fact that the cast is so diverse.
Right.
I love that quality to it. We get to see so much of the cast together, and the fact that you did that more in the editing is even more fascinating. What was it like with that cast?
The editing is the final right. We always say as writers or as filmmakers, the editing is the last writing, right? So because of the way that I'm working, it's like putting together a documentary. Ultimately, right? I create a story and those characters, and then I go into the story world and shoot it like a documentary, which is a very different way of doing it.
So how many takes do you allow? How many do you like? I mean, obviously you have a lot of footage.
Yes, that's the crazy part of it. Well, the way that perhaps I start at the beginning, which is I work. I have an ensemble of actors that gets expanded with each film, depending on the needs of the film, and then I work with those actors for. It has come to be, in both cases, 1.5 years. Funnily enough,
Wow.
It feels like this is the right time for that, the right time frame for doing that. And I start with the actors, in weekly workshop sessions. We kind of go through the lives of the characters. And we go through the lives of the characters, meaning up to the timeline of the film. Sometimes we will go into the future or in parallel worlds and into their childhood. So I have them experience their characters and the lives of the characters, and slowly I have them experience each other. And sometimes even switch, bring them into the other person's position so that they experience another character. And that happens over the course of 1.5 years. So by the time we start shooting, those actors are the characters. So when we start shooting, I will not, I will do a final rewrite of the screenplay so that a lot of the, so that really they each speak as they know them to speak, as characters, as the characters they have evolved to be. And then when we start shooting, I will, sometimes give them pages. Sometimes I won't. Sometimes I will give them, I will give pages to one actor and the other I will have react to that. So for instance, the gun scene in 42 Seconds of Happiness, the only actor who had the scene was the actor who
has the gun.
Who has the gun, because she had a long monologue and she had to memorize that monologue and we had to work on that monologue. But she was the only one, and then the actor who plays her husband had a part of it, so that he knew that this is happening, but everybody else didn't know. So I had that fresh reaction in the first take, and then we do several takes, and when I edit, I merge those takes and I create the scene in the editing. That's the final pass. And sometimes, it's basically it's, usually in the usual way of shooting, the actors will have more information than the characters, right? I mean, because they've read the screenplay.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is to put the actor and the character on the same level of knowledge. So the actor knows just as much as the character. So they experience the story. And that allows for being rather than performing. And that's the quality that I'm looking for. I mean, my whole process is very actor-centered. And that's something that I'm, the whole work goes.
It comes across as
that.
Honest.
As what?
As honest, as real.
Oh, real.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. That's what that's my. Yeah, somebody said it's like watching real people in real situations in their real lives, and that's exactly what I'm going for.
So I've got to ask then, in searching for that house,
right?
Is the pool part of the house? Was the pool separate?
Well, that's another thing. It's like things that we've learned doing in a certain way, I'm kind of questioning whether we should be doing them that way. So I talked about casting, for instance. I'm not doing casting the usual way. I don't cast. Well, I do, but the actors don't know it. What I do is we have the workshop. I invite the actors that I feel, that I basically it's a group of actors that I have this trustful relationship with, and then there's other actors that are added to with every film. But when I give them a part and we start working on the part, if I feel that this is not right for this actor, then I will change it, but they won't find out. So it's kind of it comes organically. So I don't sort of do the usual thing of inviting like 10 people and then having them read and then cast. The same thing happens with location scouting. Once I know what I want approximately, and once we have the location, then the location becomes a character, so the location is written into the final draft of the screenplay.
Yeah, and you
So
see
that's-
it, like the
yeah.
kitchen sequence, you see
Yeah.
how you've molded into it.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, let us know where we can find out where this film can be found from here. Obviously, we
Right.
got to experience it at the film festival yesterday, but
Yeah.
how can people keep in track of the film, but also you, Christina?
Right. Well, we are on social media, obviously. So we have a page on Facebook, 42 Seconds of Happiness. I'm on Facebook. So we sort of, I have a group which is called Writers Improv Studio, because this whole process I call the Writers Improv method. So people can keep up with that, and we have a distributor, so the film will eventually, we just started our festival journey, and will eventually be online on the usual, Amazon, iTunes, and all that.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for the